Beardy and the Beast Media Club.
Ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba. This is a placeholder intro song.
Welcome to the Beardy and the Beast Media Club, a discussion of media where we will not shy away from spoilers. We will not leave those spoilers to be dragged away in the dark abyss. We're available here and on many other services with a full list at beardyandthebeast.com. Give us a like, follow us, and of course join the discussion in the comments. My name is Drew, and with me, of course, is the looming host body, Devin. Today we'll be discussing the 2020 sci-fi horror Underwater. So Devin, were you able to explore the depths of this piece?
Um, well, depths may not be the right word to use. With that being said, I thoroughly enjoyed this film.
uh,
I'm suspecting you didn't.
I'm gonna go ahead and disagree with you on this one, Devin. I did not thoroughly enjoy this film. I only nominally enjoyed this film. It was alright. It was better than expected. Positives, negatives. It's just for something that was on my list that I didn't even know what genre it was
Yeah.
until like an hour beforehand when I texted you with like, what is it? What is even this movie?
Fair enough. So I only heard about this movie from another podcast that I watch,
Hmm.
and they were defending the film against another channel that I watch.
So you gotta make those decisions for yourself, right? You gotta see it
that
and then make a yeah.
that's exactly where it came from. Part of it was, didn't necessarily go in expecting much,
Hmm.
which helps. Uh, but I I think I could see this movie becoming a cult classic in the long run. Honestly,
I think I don't know. That's kind of pushing it from my point of view because a lot of the things they were doing were just kind of like avert calls to things. It seemed like it was trying to replicate the feel of other movies, more of like a carbon copy of instances rather than being its own thing to me. I did however appreciate the whole thought of sci-fi in the depths of the ocean.
hmm
It's a mostly unexplored sort of thing when it comes to movie, especially like sci-fi horror.
yeah, I-
I think the last one I saw was probably The Sphere as like a, a a 12-year-old or some such, and I had just read the book, so
yeah.
it was kind of a situation, but you don't see it often. I to think about it objectively, I felt like it wanted to be alone in the dark, and it wanted to be pitch black, and it wanted to be these kind of movies like A Group Against the Darkness. You could even maybe even throw a bit of Mist in there, given that it had that Lovecraftian feel.
Yeah. Well, it definitely had a Lovecraftian feel
Yes.
because that actually was Cthulhu.
See, I was wondering about when I was watching it, and then until I saw something in the end where it was like, oh yeah, he's saying that that's legit just Cthulhu. I'm like, really look like any of the depictions.
Well, apparently there was a lot of things cut that kind of got cut out that
Hmm.
would have tied it to the mythos a bit more.
Okay.
So, but it is canonically Cthulhu, which canonically makes this the first time Cthulhu's ever appeared in film.
I guess. Hey.
Yeah.
See,
I
when
I actually thought it was going to be tied to Cloverfield.
I had that
Is almost
feeling as soon as the film ended, I went on the internet and I was like, "Is this a Cloverfield piece?"
Mhm.
Because it felt very similar to the Cloverfield movie and the original like Cloverfield kaiju.
Yeah.
the parasites too even felt kind of similar.
Yeah.
Like felt, but obviously we're not.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing more just straight up calls to the Cthulhu mythos in these levels of production.
Yeah.
Because usually they're smaller productions that kind of dip into it.
Hmm. Well, yeah, and I mean, this is kind of the second Lovecraftian film that we've covered at this point.
Hmm.
Right? Event Horizon also would have been is Lovecraftian inspired anyway.
Yeah, you definitely
Um,
get the inspired rather than something canonical that you got from this. And I saw it in post while kind of reading through things about the film. I got it, but the fact that I'm familiar with the Cthulhu mythos and had to be told that was what
yeah,
worked against it.
yeah, I agree. It'd be interesting to see what was cut, but I
Mm.
mean, this movie also kind of went through.
The production heck.
Yeah, well, not quite. There's a different trope for it.
It's
It
not
sat on
the
a shelf,
oh yeah yeah.
right?
It wasn't a Event Horizon situation. It was definitely a kaiju on the shelf
Yeah.
situation. It was originally recorded in 2017, was it?
Yeah, it was finished in 2017. Is what I saw.
It didn't
So
feel, from a film standpoint, it didn't feel that old. And
yeah,
like in the realm of movies, things do change rapidly unless you're looking at your blockbuster superhero things where they're all mostly the same.
yeah. So it's interesting that you said that it felt kind of like a hype of it trying to be other movies.
Yeah.
Because like I said, there's kind of a couple different reviews that I'd heard of this film, and that's actually one of the points that the one who was against the film
Mm.
said. They said, and they said the film failed because it was trying to be that. It's kind of his thing. I'm kind of getting over it. It's he was saying it's like felt too much like Alien and stuff like this. It's like no, like the movies that you mentioned at least were again that Lovecraftian,
Yeah,
right? Even pitch,
Lovecraftian. It's a situational thing too. Small group abandoned in darkness, against the unknown in that Lovecraftian bubble.
yeah,
It felt very similar, but it didn't feel tropey in that way, and
yeah,
that's why it's forgivable. I
mhm,
would never say that it ruined the film. I definitely would say that it would have been better if they were nods to rather than replications.
mm,
Because I do kind of like that. Like perfect example of what I mean. When she was when Nora was in the suit and she was on top of the light after she went flipping in the water out into the middle of nowhere, having the monster kind of like one of the parasite monsters like peek up at her and then kind of disappear, and you're like,
mhm,
oh, that like it was almost even kind of like cute to the silhouette that it had,
yeah,
and then as it got closer, like it was obviously not. It's definitely something more disturbing looking.
yeah,
To me, that was more of a nod to the various tropes of horror movies where you can't quite see it and something's coming towards you and you don't know quite what it is. Opposed to like, maybe I'm just over people getting dragged into,
that's that's fair.
because it's like you could almost call it in
Oh,
any movie that has that kind of situation. It's like, oh yeah, gonna get dragged into the darkness. Someone's gonna there's gonna be screaming.
mm. I mean, I honestly felt like for the most part they averted that. I mean, we literally see Paul get ripped out of his suit as he got dragged into the darkness, as it were.
I like that one. The the series of deaths
Mhm.
were not predictable.
Believe it or not, there was a pattern.
Oh, was is this a connection to the whole like Alice in Wonderland thing? Because I didn't see a pattern, but
No, the Alice in Wonderland thing I felt was kind
forced.
of forced.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was. It's like okay, cool, we're making this illusion, but why? No, the order of the deaths. is the order that Nora meets them.
Oh,
The order that they're introduced to us in the film, outside
okay.
of Nora. Yeah.
That,
Um,
that might also be why I didn't recognize it because I was basing the potential deaths off of tropes, and I thought Rodrigo would go either to the end or just the end,
yeah.
not being axed right off the gate. And then of course Paul thought he would probably die in more of a because of his character type. I thought
Yeah.
he would die in a more heroic manner.
Yeah.
Um, but there were things that they did in that way that just were not what I expected,
Yeah.
and that's what actually saved the film for me. Because I was going for like, acting's okay, they're doing a great job, the sets are nice, like everything is fine, but the series of events was what was bugging me. And then when you had those unexpected beats, like order of death, the way that she was dragged away from the group, or even the fact that there was like a large kaiju
Mm,
situation, like I didn't expect that at all.
yeah.
I thought it would have just been all the little parasite things. So,
So there's a couple things that I would like to kind of run on from this.
hmm,
So, um, so I'm just going to list them off just so I get them said, and then we
yeah,
can kind of break them down. So this film, I felt, would have been fine even without the monster element. It had the makings of a good disaster film
hmm,
straight off the bat. Um, the idea, and I mean, there's a lot of things led into that as well. Things like, oh no, the reactor could be
mm-hmm,
melting down and stuff like this. The Again, the little monsters could have been the end of it, but there was actual when you actually stop and think about it for a second, the kaiju Cthulhu wasn't as out of place after all.
mm-hmm,
They were talking about earthquakes.
yeah,
You see the drill tossed, like this massive, massive drill tossed. There's no way those little monsters did that. There was something bigger.
mm-hmm,
And you even kind of get the groans in the distance that clearly aren't coming from those small things. It wasn't it was led up to, though again, when you're going to the movie, especially we're not really having any expectation around it, I could see why that would uh, come across as jarring.
mm-hmm.
But I do think they actually led up to it.
Yeah. Well, I didn't think it was like a bad thing per se.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just it was unexpected, and that, again, those unexpected moments are what saved the movie. I kind of speaking of the disaster um, film point that you mentioned. I I like that you said that because when I was originally like I hadn't even seen a trailer.
mhm,
I was just watching this movie. So originally, the way that it was introduced to me, I thought it was going to be like a disaster movie with like a psychological thriller in Nora's mind
okay,
during a disaster, is what I thought it
mm,
would be. Because, like, isolated, there's an incident, maybe head trauma, and all of a sudden, like, she's seeing things, or she's hearing things, or she's confronting her past. It easily could have went that way.
yeah.
And then, of course, the way that they ramped it up, oh, you have a little parasite, bigger thing, and then like a host. Actually,
The big,
that makes the little parasite make even more sense.
mm,
That's just another lead up to those things being parasites on a host body.
yeah.
Like it was structured well, but unexpected. When it comes to the like even those order of deaths, when I was writing my notes, I was like, as soon as I saw Emily, I'm like, oh, she's gonna die. I wrote that down. Guess
I did
I'm
not.
wrong.
It's funny. I didn't write that one down. Um, I wrote down Smith. Oh, he's
Oh,
gonna die.
yeah.
The other only person who survives.
I'm glad that Emily Bay didn't die.
Yeah. Oh, it
I was
was.
gonna mention when characters become endearing to me, but as soon as she was like, "Do you have a dog? I have a corgi," and I'm like, "Oh." I like this character now. Got a dog.
It's all it takes to win Drew's heart.
It's pretty much true. Got a dog. Got a motorcycle. What's up? I guess we're kind of talking about characters, so let's kind of break them down.
Right?
Contentious for maybe some people, but actually great for me. Kristen Stewart, Nora Price, wonderful job.
I know, right?
I wasn't actually astonished. Like people pigeonhole her as Twilight and whatnot, but completely different character in Charlie's Angels, and she was in American Ultra. Home run on that. It was a great movie, and she did so good in it.
Or Panic Room way back when with Jodie Foster.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, people pigeonhole her for Twilight when she was just like the neutral mask, where the character that teenage girls could and preteen girls could project themselves upon her, and that's why
Yeah.
her character in that was as it is. Like she's actually a pretty good actress, and I think she did a great job here.
Yeah. I mean, you and me have made fun of Kristen Stewart a lot in the past.
Yeah, but again, that's
Um,
mostly just based on Twilight.
yeah, yeah.
There's
I've
a
actually,
recognition there.
yeah, I actually enjoy her too. But no, you're completely right. I actually had a similar conversation with a friend last week about Kristen Stewart. He's like, I can't stand her, and it was exactly what you said. Twilight is what people think of, and she's literally supposed to be there so the female audience can put themselves into her position completely.
Yeah.
So that that just makes sense. And I mean, that comes from it being like essentially a fan fiction of like, is it Interview with the Vampire? Anyway, it's basically a fan fiction of itself. Twilight was. So
One thing I liked about her character, they gave her the engineer role, but
yeah,
she didn't have the I'm this mystical engineer that knows everything.
yes,
She was definitely like a mechanical engineer. Like she didn't know computers that well.
yeah,
She could just kind of do them, and she was more like a hardware person. And I
yeah,
appreciate that I mean, as right as they could get it in a movie that's only like an hour and a half.
yeah,
They didn't go outside those bounds.
yeah, and
Is it?
straight up made the distinction.
I really like that. Like that's just good writing when it comes to the character. Because if she's like, oh, I'm gonna hack the Gibson. I'm like, you're a mechanical engineer. I mean, I know you can have hobbies, but like
Yeah,
you kind of have to stick to your various character roles in movies so that people understand who you are.
yeah. There was one thing like right at the beginning that felt a little odd to me, and while this is my first viewing of the film, as I said, like I did hear a little bit of discussion around the film, so it may have colored this and could have been why it jumped out at me. And even without that, so her intro monologue was very nihilistic,
Hmm.
but it was paired with her saving a spider and then immediately trying to go and rescue as many people as she could when she saw what was happening. That felt a little,
Well, if you take it
it,
from the perspective, if she had gone with her fiance, she would have been able to save him. I mean, just because someone's cynical doesn't mean they're not going to try to help someone.
it as I said, like, I mean, I know she said cynical, but it came across nihilistic,
Mm,
which is which is the which is why I specifically said nihilistic
mm,
there, because that seemed a little out of place, and just with her actions throughout the film, that whole monologue at the beginning just felt off to me.
mm.
I don't think it quite set what it intended to, but I mean, her actions in those first few in those opening moments painted her character as she came across throughout the rest of the film. Someone who is actively trying to to save people
Well, I can
and
reason it
help.
for you.
All right.
I can reason it from a or psychological standpoint
All right.
because of the internalized trauma which she had experienced. It
Mm.
wasn't that she was actually describing herself as she is, but describing herself as what she would like to be to protect herself from
Okay.
that kind of defense mechanism. I'm like this, and she's, a mantra telling herself she's like that so that maybe she doesn't feel, or maybe she can escape what she's feeling. Mind you, there would be timing issues with that, and
Yeah.
that's really me just saying a thing to make it work. I actually agree with you now, but from a psychological standpoint, it could fit with a throwaway line later.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
but maybe there's a scene or something. It definitely, they were probably going for the gradual, her going from like nihilism to, I guess, martyrdom in the end,
Yeah.
like some type of growth or change in character. Didn't actually see much growth from her character. And I think whatever growth you could surmise from her during the film would have been via interpretation from Kristen Stewart.
Yeah. Okay.
It might have just been a weird story beat. I mean, it was a good intro, but
Yeah. Yeah. I
it's
felt it set up the world well. I think,
yeah,
as you're right, it could have literally just been like that timing aspect.
yeah,
And I appreciated. I actually appreciated that they didn't do the 20 minutes with jerks. I appreciated that they basically started right away with like, oh crap, the
yeah.
station's falling apart. And you're right, having that spread out just a little bit might have actually made that fit a little bit better. Um,
Maybe not like 20 minutes of jerks. Maybe 2 minutes.
yeah.
2 minutes with jerks. So what then do you think of Captain Lucian, Vincent Castle? I mean, pretty straightforward as a character. Came across as they tried to immediately paint him as like he treats his crew as something precious, as part of his family, and he wants to hold them up and be a good captain. Did you get that kind of vibe from him? Because I kind of felt that.
Yeah, I definitely had the family vibe.
I think they didn't.
Uh,
I didn't paint. I don't think they painted him well that way. Because during his intro, they kind of, to compare this to Event Horizon again.
mhm.
The captain from Event Horizon immediately, you knew right off the bat within 30 seconds, like, this crew's a family. They look up to him. He'll do anything for them. But I felt if that was painted in oil, Lucian was done in finger paints.
So I I see where you're coming from. I think there's a there's a few differences with the character.
Mm,
So while I got that family feel, I again it could have been actually painted from just other media that we've covered talked about in the past.
mm.
I think he came across to me as, the just the captain trope in
Yeah.
general, right? Like the I'm going down with my ship and such like this. We didn't I mean the station apparently had like 400 people. We see
Uh,
6.
yeah.
I think it was like 316 or
16.
something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly it.
Yeah. So we don't see him in that same situation, and it's not like he's working with a tight knit crew.
Yeah.
Some of these characters basically had never met.
Yeah.
I definitely think like there was the aspect of the going down with the ship, making sure the crew survives, but it's clear that, or rather, it becomes clear that he was never worried about himself surviving.
I
Like with
wonder.
first,
Sorry, I wonder. I wonder if he was simply just using the attachments of the crew to, again, me just saying random stuff. It he's using the attachments that he has with the crew to fill the void. Is like a lost family member.
yeah, that's exactly what I think. Right? I mean, clearly, he didn't talk about his daughter much. Talked about her enough to know that she existed,
Hmm.
but not enough to know that she's been dead for like 15 years. So I mean, definitely that work is filling the void, and
Hmm.
so I think like when he's sitting there, I don't think it was, I don't think he was sitting in that escape pod bay with the going down with the ship. I really did see that. at the end as like, nah, he was ready.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Yeah,
In hindsight, I definitely have that same feeling.
yeah.
As
Um,
far as far as Rodrigo Nagenda or Mahmudo Athi,
yeah.
I really wish he had more of a role in this film. Like I liked his character, like the cautious, nervous type, but
Mm.
10 minutes is what he got. I thought he could have been an interesting character, but I guess it would have clashed with Emily's archetype.
It would have clashed with Emily's archetype, and
Like overlap, not
yes, that makes more sense.
yeah.
Yes, it would have been nice to have more of him. At the same time, his death, he had one of the two heroic deaths.
Hmm.
He he knew full well he wasn't getting through that. I mean, you see that right away with the helmet. It's like he picked up the helmet, it had a crack. He made sure no one else had it.
I
Right?
really
So,
appreciated that about him
mhm.
because I had that moment when he picked it up. I'm like, well, that one's cracked. Why are you why are you
Yeah,
taking that one? It's true though. One of the two heroic deaths.
yeah,
Appreciate that.
yeah. Which is a really interesting take on the trope of the black guy is the first to go, which
Hmm.
is unfortunately a trope. And it happened here, but I honestly feel it's averted at the same time because it's he wasn't killed by the monsters. He knew exactly what he was doing. He did it. He was making sure he kept everyone else alive.
Hmm.
So, um,
A heroic death opposed to like something
being
scared or chased or
yeah,
dragged away.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
What about Mr. T.J. Miller? Paul Abel are continuously Alice in Wonderland spouting quirky character or smartass.
so the Alice in Wonderland stuff aside, it's again I just feel that was a bad tack on. It didn't
Mm,
it didn't add anything to the film. Not that I could see. I mean, it would have been nice to have, all of those Alice in Wonderland references be, I don't know, Lovecraftian references, maybe.
or
Or
to
something.
I mean, or have some type of parallel to the actual storyline of the show.
Yeah.
Uh, I was torn on Paul. I originally just did not feel that his character fit or suited the tone. It felt to me like, oh, it's a horror movie. You always got to have a smartass until halfway through his arc,
Mhm.
and then I was like, oh no, he's good friends with Smith. You know, they have their secret bro handshake.
Yeah.
He's like a little bit weird and pathological, but you kind of have to be off to be at the bottom of the Marianas Trench for like an extended period of time.
Yeah.
I think it was his he was humanized to me and not just a trope anymore when they went for the walk for the distress beacon,
Mhm.
because it was clear that in a very normal natural way he was super frightened, like very nervous, and he was just like, can we get out of here now?
Yeah. Well, that's honestly what I felt with his character. And some of it's, we kind of know what we expect of TJ Miller.
Yeah.
Um, but I think even his smarminess, is that the right word? His comedic pinnings
Mm,
were they didn't come across to me as they didn't fully come across to me as just being the funny guy.
mm.
They it came across to me when he was joking around as the nope, this is my defense mechanism. This is how I get through this.
Well, I went partway through that from being like, this guy doesn't fit, I'm not feeling him in the film, to like almost projecting on him.
Mhm.
Because in the way that you just mentioned, him using humor as escape or defense is what I'll do sometimes.
Yeah,
And in a very similar way, it was a little over the top to start, but as it went, I could see myself in that position.
yeah. It was interesting. It's like at his death, there was no joking after that point at all.
Hmm.
Either, right? So, which I think is another thing that points towards that being what they were trying to do with that.
Like painting it
Because
with tone.
yeah, because if they wanted to if they wanted to have a funny guy throughout the film and to actually be that funny guy to alleviate the tension, they wouldn't have killed him off, or they would have continued finding ways to have
Yeah.
those moments.
Well, they probably
So
would have made Smith the funny guy, and
yeah,
then Paul would have been
yeah,
just some random.
yeah.
No, I
So
agree. You did that does kind of enlighten me to the fact that it definitely took a darker tone after he
mhm,
died. It it's like he was the moments before the dusk, like or sorry
yeah,
before during the dusk where the moments before the sun has completely gone past,
yeah,
and then just darkness, and that's what
yeah,
I kind of got at that point. But that's also when the movie started getting good for me.
yeah.
Like that's
Fair enough.
when the tone changed and unexpected things started happening.
Mhm.
I really liked Emily Bay, Emily Haversham or Jessica Henwick.
Yes.
Great. I mean, another great actress in this film. I think they all did great jobs with their parts, but I think Emily nailed her parts probably the most.
Mm,
Maybe it's her cadence, like her vocal cadence, but it really matched the. It wasn't like a frightened little girl trope. It was more of she has no idea what to do, very frightened, very lost, but still like a full grown adult.
yeah,
And she's just pushing forward because that's all she can do.
yeah.
And like she nailed it spot on.
She was the character to me that felt like there was the most growth
Mm,
in, because again, you started out with that I am way out of my depth at the beginning. I'm not 100% certain. No, I think she was just a researcher. I think
like
was her role,
a
right?
biology something something.
Yeah, the intern.
Mm.
Yeah, the research assistant, and clearly no idea what's going on. She was surrounded by the captain, one of the engineers. The two people that actually go outside, and so it was. So yeah, she was out of her depth. Gets poked at again by Paul.
Oh, that was
All right,
that
Emily,
was
it's your time to shine. No, I'm kidding with you.
that was probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I
Yeah,
have to admit, like it was just so unexpected, and it he said it so stone faced. Like he was
yeah,
definitely the straight man in the bit, and just like
yeah,
the this is kind of a testament to her acting. Her face went completely still,
yeah,
as what you would expect when the color drains from someone's face. I mean,
yeah,
obviously it didn't because you can't really reproduce that. It had the mannerisms of she didn't know what to do or say, and it probably could have made her go out there.
yeah. And I mean, so you have that to her, being frightened and basically kind of helping her through everything at the beginning because she was so to death too. It literally just being her and her unconscious her unconscious partner, and just all she knows, she's just got to keep going, as you said,
Well,
right?
the fact that she went back for Nora
Mm,
to drag her back, I like huge growth because she
yeah,
had made it to the place. She had made it to the destination. You would have expected her to just shut down.
yeah. And also like to the point that she was willing to be the last one the last one out of the station, and realizing when Nora's like, no, you go.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, I can help you fix that. Like, no, you can't, you're the biologist. But just such a big change from the that color draining situation earlier. So I mean, it's always hard to talk about character growth in not just a short movie, but a movie that takes place in a very short time
Hmm.
as well, right? So really seeing any character growth in a lot of these cases is a big thing, and I think she shone what she had more of that. That was her where she shone
Like the
as
actual
well.
growing character.
Yeah, I absolutely loved, and yeah, her just the work done by Jessica was great.
Oh, spot
Like, it was
on.
completely believable.
This is a testament to great casting
Hmm.
as well, and a script working with the character, or the script working with the actress, and then of course the actress being just pull it off.
Yeah.
I'd love to say more about John Gallagher, Liam Smith, but didn't really do much in the film.
Yeah.
Just kind of got dragged
Well,
along. It's more of a suitcase than a carry.
yeah. It's interesting because I note it down as like, oh, yeah, there's no way to survive this. I mean, there was the obvious things like, okay, the CO2 scrubbers are gone. It's like, okay, sure. So yeah, you become the dead weight because you literally can't exert anything to keep whatever little bit of air you have, that type of thing. In suit 13 and
Mm,
literally being dragged around. It's like, no, 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 you're one of the guys who gets to survive. Okay.
I expected him to have that moment where something like there's a cliff in the underwater area that they are, and he like falls off of it, and Emily can't. They're attached by the cord, and Emily can't pull him up, so like he can barely do anything, and he detaches himself.
Yeah.
I expected that kind of moment,
Yeah.
uh, but instead, I guess you you got just Emily just dragging him
Yeah.
across the seafloor the entire way.
Yeah.
Liam was just a catalyst for a physical catalyst, not an emotional or a mental one, but a physical catalyst to Emily's character growth.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much the cast. I think we covered everyone.
Well, I thought it was funny because there was two other major people that were notated in the cast,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, who's Poseidon Patty? Who's Godmother? So apparently Amanda Troop was the AI or
Okay.
the announcer or whatever. And then Fiona Renee, I think Godmother is Cthulhu.
Okay. Yeah, maybe.
So it's possible that she just made like groany noises to a sound design person, and they just did something with it.
Man.
I couldn't find a straight answer on that, so I'm unsure, but I think that's how that goes.
Yeah. Um Speaking of sound,
Yeah, sound design. Yes, no?
I quite enjoyed the sound design.
Hmm.
I thoroughly believed that they were underwater with, well, I mean, apparently they were underwater, but they having that carry through with the Foley artists and such too.
Hmm.
It's
I
I
did.
thought it was really good.
There was definitely parts where it felt really good. Like I didn't get absorbed or pulled out by music, which is
Mhm.
always a bad thing for both of us.
Yeah.
I did find it cluttered sometimes. I didn't I didn't feel that it used silence well. There was
I
just
don't
always something going on.
I see where you're coming from. I think might have slightly redefined silence
Hmm.
in this case because I know we've definitely talked about like the dead, like pin drop silence,
Yeah.
and they didn't have the pin drop silence moments, but they had that I'm dunked underwater silence. And so that's what I felt they were using. So they used the silence to, yeah, to put in that underwater sound. So yeah, that was always there and always kind of that oppressive feel is what I felt.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure if that is in line with what you were thinking or not.
I was thinking more like, take for instance when they were on the station, you could hear groaning outside, or sounds outside. You could hear the groaning of the ship. You had music in the background, characters running. There was points where it seemed so cluttered, but not in situations that would be panicked. So I'm not talking about as the ship is falling apart.
Mhm.
I would have liked if it was more subtle, like during the walk. There's only one scene that came to me that, via the sound design, that they were able to express the isolation,
Okay.
and that was when Nora was in the suit and like just breathing heavy, just like
Mhm.
looking around to really illustrate like how far away from any form of safety or savior that they actually are.
Okay.
But this also could have been compounded with the way it was filmed. So this could be
Yeah.
just me talking about a specific thing when really it's an over project thing.
Hmm.
That might not have described it well.
Yeah. All right. I think I get what you're. I think I get where you're going with that. I I almost feel like to have like a pure silence moment, like we've seen in things like Silent Hill and such like that. I honestly think personally, I don't think that would have been the right choice throughout it.
Hmm.
I didn't feel it. I didn't really feel it cluttered like yours, but I think that's because most of the sounds that I was hearing were sounds I would expect to be hearing in a station underwater
Hmm.
that's crumbling. And so, really, the only chance that you would have any type of silence in this situation is that scene with just Nora
Hmm.
looking around because either they're with everyone else, literally trying to keep up any tiny bit of morale they could, or everything was literally falling underneath, falling apart in them, right?
Hmm.
It'd be like, I mean, I know you've been on ferries. It's not silent, right? There's always the sound of the engine or
Hmm.
something like that. And if it's silent, that would be jarring. So
It's just
that's
that,
what I felt.
yeah, for sure. I did like they were able to express via sound the underwater feel quite a bit. Like it did feel muffled and muddied in
Mhm.
such a way that I appreciated it that way. But if I were to actually change one major thing about the sound design and like the music in this, it would have probably been like Buddy playing the radio
Mm.
in the suiting up bay. Uh, it didn't really enhance his character, and it just kind of like pulled you out of the scene, but not in the levity way that you would expect.
I don't completely disagree with you there because, and the reason I don't completely disagree, so I think I disagree for the most part. I don't completely disagree because it did pull you out a little bit, but it's because you hear the music before you realize he's at a radio.
Mm.
So that part kind of jarred me. But when he was there, like again, it did actually play into his character. I thought pretty well because he's like, no, I'm trying to get some levity. Oh no, this isn't working. Never mind. Right, which again goes back to the him using the comedy
Defense.
as his coping, yeah, as his defense, right? But each time he's done that and it didn't quite hit the mark, he pulled back right away, turned off the music right away. Again, immediate is like, no, I'm going out, not you, Emily, right? Like
I
it
think,
was,
yeah, I think a different choice there would have been best.
yeah, yeah. And that's why I say like I partially agree. It it could have been handled slightly differently than they did it.
Oh, for
I
sure.
don't know exactly how, but yeah, I
The
agree.
I do like those suits though. They kind of transitioning from like sound to set production, that sort of thing. The way that the the suits looked reinforced and built in such a way when they walked, it sounded like they were as heavy as they were. It There was definitely some weight behind them, and they definitely looked like they felt reinforced.
Yeah.
But it does give you that initial idea of, hey, like these are deep sea diving suits. But I also had that kind of moment of like, if you're that deep, that suit's not actually gonna do much. But I will suspend my disbelief. Good sir.
So it's interesting. I like it definitely let me suspend my disbelief. Like I looked at it, it's like, no, this looks like power armor.
Yeah, I
um
had that thought too, actually.
yeah, like this is exactly what I would expect for power armor. So it even though you're right at those depths, yeah, it's not doing anything. Well, that's a fun little trivia thing that I found afterwards. Um or trope thing I found. But they clearly made them they designed them with the thought in mind that these things are supposed to be 7 miles under the sea.
Yeah.
So they had the bulk. There was a funny comment about the suit about that threw me off a little bit is like when like they had to crawl through that tunnel
Hmm.
just before Paul gets killed, and I was like, "Let me go. I'm the smallest." I'm like, "None of you are small. You're all wearing the same suit. This thing wasn't built for you." Uh, uh, it- but no, apparently these suits were practical. They were 140 pounds. Like these were not light things. One of the tropes that I was reading about that it's playing loose with physics.
Hmm.
If they're that far underwater, if it's dripping water like that, when there's the first starts of cracks, that means that they're at that pressure, which means yeah, the suit and everything should be fine because the suit and air are all going to be that heavy pressurized, which means technically we shouldn't have seen Rodrigo get imploded. But again, my disbelief quite suspended. Well, I mean, it didn't need to be
well,
super suspended, honestly.
well, I definitely had that. Like, I watched a movie good moment when I was like, that wouldn't survive at those depths. They did a really good job with those, was my next immediate thought.
Yeah.
And I feel like they did a really good job with the set design and structure designs altogether.
Hmm.
Like, even the computer door panel seemed more functional than high tech.
Yeah.
Like, it is something that you could pull apart and fix when you're that far underwater. Like the hallways
Hmm.
and the structures of the underwater station are what actually illustrated the seclusion to me.
Yeah.
And that was even before like the incident happened.
Yeah. Yeah. They did that really well. Apparently, they used the same set for both the starting station and the ending station.
Yeah,
Just
it
kind
could
of move the chunks around.
makes sense.
But yeah, but it felt like I would expect an underwater lab to look like.
Yeah.
Like it was mostly industrial, but realizing there's people living there, like the idea was function. And again, it did kind of immediately give that isolation feel.
Mm.
Like you said, it's like there's nothing out there.
Well, there's not supposed to be any.
Yeah.
Du-du-du.
Yeah. And sorry, what you were saying with the suits as well about how you felt they were
Well, there was
again that
wear.
wouldn't work.
Yeah, yeah,
They
well,
they actually they actively said that. It's like they're probably not going to last as long as we need them to. Like they
yeah,
were meant for quick things, right? I mean, really, spacesuits are the same thing. They're not meant for you to be out there for a long time. They're meant for you to be out there for the half hour you need to fix something, and that's it.
yeah.
So
I wanted to talk again about the suits anyways because it kind of matches with the wear of the station. They looked used. The
yeah,
environment looked inhabited. The suits looked like they were in good repair, but probably could use a reconditioning
yeah,
or even replacement. The it was a lived in environment
yes,
opposed to something shiny and new, which I also appreciated. Like I didn't consciously realize it until partway through the movie when I was kind of thinking back to the spider scene again.
hmm,
I was like, that sink was actually really grungy.
yeah,
Like it wasn't brand new. It was obviously a sink that had been used or been prepared in such a way that looked to you.
and just to clarify, it looked lived in. It didn't look messy or unkept.
Oh yeah, it looked like there was like a cleaning crew, but it's also a big station that's,
Yeah,
you got underwater station things to do.
yeah. Well, and I mean, yeah, they did it. Kind of goes just like the set design again was done really well in that regards because for a movie where we only see six people, the station before everything fell apart didn't feel like there was only six people there.
Hmm.
So yeah, I really appreciated that. I kind of appreciated the midway point station as well. It was a little odd, but you could tell it was an older station that wasn't used as much. It did kind of jump out at me. It's like if this station's been abandoned, why is there a foosball table still here?
Oh,
But
I wasn't thinking about that. I did go, hey, a foosball table,
Yeah.
My issue with that station was like her her first instinct when she got there was to cry in a shower. It didn't make sense to me. I'm like, it would have made more sense to me if she like closed the door and just passed out for a while. But to like be crying in a shower, it didn't feel right to me. But that's a completely different.
That's one of those things where I feel like knowing that there's scenes missing, nowhere near to the extent of other movies where we know what was missing. Like, I have no idea what was cut in this one. It's almost like, just a scene like her trying to call out first
Mm,
and not hearing anyone or something like that. And it's like, okay, well, this is what it is now. I think that's what they were going for. I think it's like she just figured she was completely alone.
mm,
She was the only one there. So yeah, I could see crying in a shower or something like that. So again, I think that kind of leans back to that little bit where there's just been this few things that were off just because of the timing around it, not because the reaction was necessarily wrong or bad.
well, for that midpoint station, there was a lot of things in there. It's like, why why would you leave your suit and your ID badge there? Why would you like there was books there? Like why did they leave this and didn't make sense in that way? I'll tell
Yeah.
you one thing I did like, and it was some of that funny dark humor that you kind of get in these sort of things when they panned up that sign, and at the top of the sign it said "Working alone is against company policy." Oh Nora, oh Nora.
That's kind of funny too. Uh, yeah, the midway point station to me just, you know, oh, I have an idea. Okay, so I think I know why midway point was like that,
Hmm.
why it was abandoned and such like this. So during the opening exposition, they've been there for a while. Like the mining company's been there for a while. We
Hmm.
know this. We know that station, like the midway station, was an old one that isn't used anymore. And we know by the end kind of um, scenes, like the newspaper clippings and such, that the company is completely going back there. They're doing this again. They know that.
Hmm.
This isn't the first time it happened.
Hmm. Was that what they were alluding to with like the scribblings behind the captain's clothing?
I
What I
think
wonder.
so.
There was something that just didn't sit well. Like I had the same kind of thought, and it didn't sit well for me. And there was a couple scenes like that. It makes me wonder, like, what did they cut? Was there a throwaway line that they actually threw away, and I'm missing something now?
Yeah. Well, what? So, I mean, this is clearly me adding to the film stuff that wasn't clearly written in the film.
Yeah.
But knowing just knowing that this is canonically Cthulhu, and what we know of Cthulhu is there's always cultists that are trying to awaken Cthulhu.
Hmm.
So clearly the company is going back there. Clearly they know what's going on. Definitely implied that they knew what was going on before this happened as well.
Hmm.
Right? So yeah, it makes sense that mm, like I could write in my head that they are trying to awaken Cthulhu. First station failed or whatever, so they were forced to abandon it, which explains why, again, there's an ID badge left in the locker with the suit, and explains why it was because like, there was stuff strewn about
Hmm.
in that station as well, and if it hadn't been touched, I would expect that stuff to be gone or
Well, I
at
mean, if
least
it
organized.
no, because if it was deserted rapidly
Yeah,
to the point where it's legitimately you get up and you board the escape vessel,
yeah,
then you would find that condition. A good example would be an episode of Firefly where they legitimately board this vessel,
mm,
and in the dining halls, like the food trays are still sitting there,
yeah.
and they're
Yeah, I know exactly what episode you're talking about. I can't remember what that one's called.
yeah,
Like the first one with the Reapers, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you have to leave, run, or there's something that much of an emergency, you might find something in that condition. I'm wondering.
And you have to remember specifically said that that station wasn't an option,
Mm,
right? And we know for a fact he was there.
I wonder about. I'm wondering. I may have seen something in the opening credits, but I thought it was simply in. I think I missed something in opening credits
Yeah,
that illustrates what you're saying, and I think it backs up what you're saying.
yeah.
Because I remember seeing something about a previous incident, and that would make sense that the Midway station or whatever was that. So I mean, what
Yeah,
you're saying makes a whole lot of sense.
yeah. I can't remember the like. They definitely flash by pretty quickly. Like
Hmm.
if I sat there pausing it frame by frame, probably actually get a huge chunk of story. But that's not completely feasible on a first viewing of.
No, well,
So
especially like if you want to actually watch the movie while
yeah,
taking notes or analyzing it.
yeah.
You want to enjoy it too.
Mhm.
The There was actually another scene that didn't sit well with me, and it till the end. Oh, sorry, to rephrase that. There's another scene that didn't sit well with me even past the ending.
Yeah.
The opening scene with the spider,
Mhm.
I thought was going to be some dark foreshadowing because originally it looked like she was going to try to wash it down the drain, but
Mhm.
instead she didn't, and she pulled it out of the sink where it couldn't get out. I'm sitting here and I'm like, I'm pretty sure you can't drown spiders. I'm pretty sure when you wash them down the drain, they just dry out and crawl back out because they don't breathe in the same way we do.
Yeah.
Just saying. um, that might be just me with my stupid spider fact, but um, I just had that moment. I'm like, I couldn't place it, and it didn't make sense to me until I was reading about the film after. But apparently, it was supposed to like, endear you to Nora, and I don't.
Well, I mean, I already kind of talked about that. Like,
Yeah.
it's
It was kind of out of place, especially in relation to the monologue.
yeah, and that's the bigger thing to me. It was like, I don't think it would. I think it would have been fine if it wasn't for the monologue. Again, it's just that 1 second to show. It's the pet the dog moment,
Hmm.
right? We're clearly not spending any time with these characters before everything goes to hell. It's so yeah, it was supposed to be that pet the dog moment. It's like yeah, the hesitation of killing it, right, and just saving it instead. It was supposed to show that she cares. If the monologue wasn't there, if she wasn't literally talking about what's the point while saving the spider,
Set 7 words on the end of that monologue
Mhm.
would have made it fit so much more perfectly.
All
And
right.
again, I'm never one to say that a film should be changed in any other way, but like to make it fit, at the end of the monologue, she could say, or at least I keep telling myself.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you're just like, that monologue fits, everything kind of falls into place.
Yeah.
But like the spider, I don't. There's always that one little thing you get caught up on, and for me, it was the spider thing. And it's probably because of my super smart spider fact, but I just like Spider would have been fun anyways. But then I was also like, how is this going to apply to the film? Is there foreshadowing? I mean, I guess it kind of was foreshadowing because she did save the other two and martyr herself, but I was kind of. I actually thought the captain was going to martyr himself and push Nora into a escape pod in the end. And then when the captain died, I was like, I mean, it makes sense that he died, but
Yeah.
now I don't know what's going on with the ending. And again, that made the movie go from, to kind of revisit what I was saying before, that unexpectedness and those choices made the movie go from something I probably wouldn't say I enjoyed per se. Watchable is probably what I would have said. I'd give this one 4 escaped crew members out of 6.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, that sounds about good. Right. Actually, I think this movie,
There was just a lot of
this
things
movie
that
should have
were,
done better than it did.
yes.
Like, and that's to go way back. That's why I'm saying like I could see this becoming that cult classic. Like, I mean, I'm looking at the meta score of like 48 out of from Metacritic. The fan ratings were Well, I think they've gone up a bit, but like apparently when it first came out, like they were below 50 on
Well,
like Rotten Tomatoes and such.
I only
And
ever look at the fan rating.
yeah, and it's I think this movie ran into a few different issues. It it came out while there were a lot of other horror movies coming out, right before, movie theaters weren't allowed to exist anymore. There's a lot going against this movie in that regard, so I'm not surprised it's technically a flop. I think it deserves a lot more than it did
A bit,
get, and
I would say, in the realm of sci-fi, like adventure horror, because it wasn't expressly horror to me.
yeah,
Like it definitely had that more cosmic horror feeling,
yeah,
with without having the thriller sides that you would expect from like a cosmic horror. This is definitely top tier in that grouping, ammo.
yeah,
But you know what? I would look forward to a sequel.
yeah,
I would like to see what they would do. Unfortunately, we couldn't have Nora, but
yeah,
you could bring back some of. Well, I guess there's only two characters survive, but you could bring back, you know, my girl Emily.
yeah, yeah.
Do it in true horror sequel where she comes back just like a hyper badass, straight up goes Re Alice for no reason. I'm joking about that. I would enjoy a sequel to this, especially if it followed the same tone. But if they did one, like I wouldn't include any of these characters, just refer to them maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt for a movie that literally takes place on like a couple miles stretch, a few miles under the ocean, they did surprisingly good with world building. Like I'm
Mm.
interested in what's going to happen in this world.
I
Like,
I I like that. And that's one of the things that like both of us kind of look for in a film, and that's what's going on in the world. I want to know what's going on with this company with the drill. I want to know like what the government bodies are going to do about it. What the future crew is going to encounter.
yeah.
So just that curiosity based on the world building that they were able to do, really just via a few snippets at the start and end, and the character design.
Yeah.
Like they did a fabulous job that way.
Mhm. We had that, and again, like you see so many disaster movies or horror movies where the plot's just kind of there. This actually made logical sense with what they were doing. Like
Yeah,
nothing jumped out, which is again another reason why it helps my overall rating of the thing. And just and they made a believable world with believable cast with literally no introduction to the cast. That's impressive. The actors were cast
they're cast right.
very well. Yeah, I would want to see more, maybe over water.
Overwater. Snakes on a sub. Uh, if they made a sequel, I'd want to see it Cloverfield esque.
Hmm.
Same world, completely different situation.
Yeah.
Is it in a space station? Is it in a bunker? Like, what's
Mhm.
going on here?
Yeah. The only thing you need to have is the TN company again, just so you
Yeah.
know it's the same one, right?
Unfortunately, they don't have the same like virality structure kind of built onto this one.
Mhm.
Something like Cloverfield did. It'd be hard to sell that second, but appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, unfortunately, is where it got slammed at the box office for reasons already kind of mentioned.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely we'll get a sequel. There's a couple other interesting production things that I'd like to point out. Feel it's a decent time to do that.
Hmm.
So, in my little bit of research around this, it was filmed like a lot of the stuff was filmed practically.
Yeah.
They were actually underwater while doing it. Kristen Stewart thought that was all going to be CGI, and she is deathly afraid of being underwater.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, so good on her.
She that's probably why she sold some of that pretty well. Like if it was me crawling through those like constrained like that triangle bit at the beginning, I'd be like, nope.
Yep.
I know they did have some out of water stuff, like people on cranes getting flipped about for like the scene where the captain gets dragged away. But I
Yeah,
know that a good portion of it, all that suit work was done in the water.
yeah. And, and I felt that because, like, again, I've noted this a few times. It's kind of like, I wonder how much of this is practical.
Mm,
And I don't know, there's something like we talked about this again in Silent Hill ages ago. It's like you can tell even if you can't tell when something's done practically. And this showed that, they had to move differently, and it's why it looked so believable when you just kind of saw stuff floating in front of them,
mm.
because it was just floating in front of them. It wasn't added in post.
Yeah,
Um,
it didn't come off as some type of yeah, post effect.
yeah,
Definitely came off like they introduced something in the water to make it murky.
yeah. So I really enjoyed that. Seem to have lost the other couple of neat little production notes that I had.
That's
So
okay. All right, I guess with that, this has been the Beardy and the Beast Media Club. Join us next time around the second wall for the season finale and recap of Carol and Tuesday. After that, Media Club will gather to discuss Princess Mononoke. Look forward to it. As always, if you enjoyed what we do, follow, like, and join the discussion in the comments. Check out a list of services and socials that we're available at beardyandthebeast.com. Later.
have a good one.